Good day, everyone. Welcome to Simple Codes with Aziz. In this tutorial, we'll be taking ourselves through how to add data inside our database, making use of PHP and MySQL. So, with this, we'll be able to actually save the data that we are collecting from the user. So we document them. So anytime we need those data, so we are going to just bring them out from the database. It's very simple. Just follow me in this tutorial. So the first thing that I'll be doing is that I'll be making sure that my server is up and running. So I'll come here. So you can see my Apache. I already started it. Then my SQL. I already started it. So in your own case, if you're still not started, so make sure you start a server because to use PHP, you need to have a local server running. So now the first thing I want to do is that I want to create a form so that anytime I anytime I collect data from my user, then I want to save the data inside the database. So the first thing I'll be doing is that, okay, I'm just going to be creating an HTML5. Yeah, I have my time. Okay, HTML5. So now I want to create a form inside form. Then I want to submit it inside the same file. So in my own case, the name of my file is class.php, class.php. Then the method I want to use a get request. So now I want to submit like three datas: the first name, the last name, and the age. So now let me just create a label. Let me create a label. Then I want to call this first name. Then I want to create an input tag, type text. Then I want the name to be f name. So I'm going to be breaking it. So let me just copy this. So I want to name this last name. So let me just put the name as L name. Then the age. Age. I want to set this as a number. I want to set this as a number. Then I'll put the name to be age. Then the next thing I'll be doing is I want to create a submit button. Input type. I want it to be submit. Then the name, I want to set it to submit. Then the value, I want it to be submit to. So now let me just go inside my browser and preview this file here. So now let me refresh. We can now see that the fields that I've created, they are there. So the last name, the age, which is number. So can just put a number there. If I click on submit, it's not doing anything. So now we need to link the PHP backend to the MySQL. Like we'll be making use of the PHP backend. So we will be using MySQL to interact with the database. So this is actually what we'll be doing in this tutorial. So now the first thing I'll be doing is that I will want to create a database to store my files. Then later I'll create a table to store my data. So now what I'll do here is that I'll come to my control panel here. So this is called PHP My Admin. So if you want to navigate there, just type on localhost, then click on enter. So you see PHP My Admin there. So just open PHP My Admin. You can see now that we are on the same page. So now you click on where you see databases. Click on databases. So in our own case, we want to create a database called tutorial. Then I'll be clicking on create. So once I create the database called tutorial. So then I will want to create another table inside the database, because we cannot actually store data directly inside our database. We need to store them in tables. So now the table that I'm going to be creating, let me call it class. Then let me check the number of fields that I have here. I have the first name, I have the last name, and I have the age. So now in my own case now, I will want another row to be there, just like an ID, so that I want it to be auto incrementing. So I will have ID of 1, then the first name, the last name, and the age. If another user creates another data, it will update the ID. So that is the idea of what I'm going to be doing next. So now I already have 3 fields here. So I'll be adding 1, making 4. So then I'll click on create. So now the first thing I'll be doing here is that just look at the fields that you can see here. The first thing here is the name of that column that you want to create. So in my own case now, I want to create the ID column first. I want it to be an integer. Then I want to auto increment it. This AI means auto increments. So the next one that I want here is the F name. F name. You can use any name in your database as long as you can actually reference it. So this first name is not an integer, it is a virtual. Then the length, I want it to be very long. So let's say like 200. So then the last name, L name, then I want it to be a variable character, then 200. Then the age, age should be an integer. Then the number of character in an age should not be more than, like, let's say like 4. Let me just put 4. So now with this, I've already set up my table schema. So now what's next for me to do is just to go and save it. So once I click on save, so this is the tutorial. Well, by the left side of my screen, so you see tutorial with a table called class 2. So just click on class. So now we can see that MySQL returned an empty result. So we don't have any row inside our table yet. So we can see here now, we can see ID, F name, L name, and age. So anytime we add a new data, it is going to populate this table for us. So now let's get back to PHP and link it with our database. So now what I will do here is that I'll come to the beginning of my document here, and I'm going to create a PHP tag. So now, just like how we have done it inside the previous tutorial, so we want to check if we actually have pressed the submit button. So we want this action to take place after we have pressed the submit button. So we'll say if is set, so $_get submit. So now we want to reference the variables. So we'll say $sign f name is equals to $_get f name. So this $_get f name is whatever we put as our first name. So the value we are storing it inside this variable. So that is basically what we are doing here. So now let me just try and duplicate this. Let me duplicate it. So now the last name, L name, then the age. We don't need to alter the ID because it will automatically increment by itself. So the first one will be 1. So the next data that we post inside our database will be 2, so and so on. So we only need to work with these 3 fields. So now there's a particular thing we need to do. We need to connect to our database, and also we need to specify our table. So now this is what I'll be doing. So at the beginning of this statement, so I'll just add that, okay, I want to create a variable $db is equals to MySQLi. We want to interact with the database using MySQLi. So MySQLi underscore connect. So we want to connect to localhost. So the username of our database, for example, now by default it is root. So, and I don't use any password. If you have any password that you are using, so this is where you put the username and password. So my username in my own case is root. So if you have not also altered yours, so the username should also be root. So then the password, since I'm not going to be using any password, then I'm going to set it to blank. Then the database name. So what is our database name? So we just come here. The name of our database is tutorial. Then I'm going to terminate. So this is the first thing to do. So when we are trying to connect to our database. So that is the statement to write. MySQLi underscore connect. So the local host, then the root, then this, then the database name. So now below it now, so we want to now run an SQL query so that it will take care of this data. So anytime we are adding data inside our database, we call that insert operation. So if we want to query data if we want to query a data that already exists inside our database, so that is select operation. So now in this case now we want to run an insert query. So now we just say $query is equals to MySQLi underscore query. So the first thing is that we want to query our database. Then we will now run the insert statement here. So we now say insert into. So what is our table name? Class. Insert it to class. So what is the heading that we want to insert? The F name, last name, and the age. Just say F name, we say L name, and the age. Then the values. So inside our values, we'll now specify the data that we want to pass inside the table. So the first thing is that we want to pass $F name. Then the second one is that we want to pass $L name. And the next thing is that we want to pass $age. So this is what we'll be doing. So now we might want to check if our data is actually submitted or not. So we can just say if $query. So we are just trying to check that if query is returned true, then I want to echo out record successfully uploaded. Then else echo record insert field. So now let's go inside the browser to test what we have done. So now let me just come here and refresh. So let's say the first name is simple codes, then the last name with Aziz, then the age is 12, then I click on submit. We can see that it's breaking it out to us that record successfully uploaded. So now let's come inside our table, then we refresh. We can see that our data has been successfully uploaded inside our table. So and we can see that the ID of one has also been generated because it is it is auto increment. So now let's put another record. So let's say Aziz, last name is Fanas, then age 24, then submit. We can see record successfully uploaded. Then I'll refresh. We can see ID of 2, the first name, the last name, and the age has also been entered. So if we want to collect data from the user, this is the right approach to do. So we just need to create a form for the user. So then we establish the backend logic. Then we use MySQL to interact with the database. So that is the right thing to do whenever we want to collect data from the user and save it for reference purpose. So now, let's just say we want to now fetch those data that we just submitted from the database. So now, let me just comment out this. Let me comment this out. Let's assume now we want to collect, we want to fetch those data that we just submitted. So now this will be a select operation. So the first thing is that I want to connect to the database again, MySQLi underscore connect, localhost, roots, then the database name is tutorial. Then now I want to run a query, $ query is equals to MySQLi underscore query, $db, then the SQL statement, which is select star from the table name class. This star represents that I want to select all the columns from the table. So this is actually what the star means. You can still specify the columns that you want to fetch, the fields that you want to fetch. So for at first I want to use all. So now let me now terminate it. So now the next thing you need to do is that you need to loop through the queries. So now we can use the while loop, while row is equals to MySQLi underscore fetch associative array. So then the query. So now this is where we are going to be, the data that we are getting row by row, everything will be appearing there. So we'll display it out on the screen. So now what I want to do is that I want to put my data inside the table. So now this is what I will do. Before I create the while, let me create a table using PHP. So then I'll just want to echo table. Then I want to echo tr. At each loop, I want to create a table row, then echo $row. To get first name now, it will now be $row, then the colon name, which is f name here in my case. So I want to put it inside td. I want to create a td. Then I'm concatenating this. Then I want to close my table. So now I want to repeat this for age and last name, name, then age. So now let's see what is going to happen. Let me echo this so that I can close my table row. Then at the end of the loop, I want to close my table. So this is how you can actually embed HTML inside your PHP code. So let's go to the browser and refresh what we are doing. So let me refresh now. We can see that it is displaying it on our screen, but it's not actually looking nice. So what I can do is just to style the table a bit. So we can come here and just type, okay. So let's just try and create a style. Let's create a style above here. So style. So we can say table. Can say table border 2 pixels solid black. So if we refresh, we can see it's looking more better. So let me use tr and td border 2 pixels solid black. So let me collapse the border in the table. Border collapse. So now let me create a table heading. So echo th. So let me call this serial number. Let me call this first name. Let me call this last name. Then let me call this age. So here too, I'm going to be calling the ID. Then the table heading too, I want it to inherit this. Then let's refresh. We can see that our table is out now and looking more decent. So let's still add some styles. So let's say width, let's say 100%. Let's see. We can see that it is now looking more better. So this is what you can do whenever you want to collect data from the user, then also what you do when you want to display the output data to the user. So now the data that you have stored inside your database, they are there permanently unless you delete them. So the data inside the database, it can be there for as very long as possible. So now let's now run delete operation. Let's run the delete operation. So now, let's say now I want to run a query. I'll just say $sign query. $sign query equals to MySQLi underscore query $db and delete from class. So now there is a conditional statement that you can use because you don't want to delete all data, all record from your table. So there is a way of adding restrictions. So we'll use the where clause to add restriction inside our query, where ID is equals to 1. So I'm just going to terminate it. Then I'm going to come here. Once I refresh, then we can see that the ID of 1 has gone. So that is how to use the delete operation. So there is another thing that you can do, but that will be in the next tutorial. We'll be covering the update operation. So where you can actually modify the data that you uploaded earlier. So we use the update operation to modify our data. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope we have been able to gain a lot of things. So see you in the next video.